Lifespans shorter than Cambodia. 1 in 5 people going hungry. Crime rates that make Mexico's cartel cities look safe. This isn't a struggling nation overseas. This is the United States, the so-called land of opportunity. But which states have it the worst? And is yours on the list? Find out on today's episode of The Saturated Show as we count down the worst states to live in America. 16. California can be a great place to live. Or an absolutely terrible place to live. A lot depends on your location and wealth level. A wealthy tech exec in Marin County is living a very different life from a cashier in San Bernardino. That's why, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, the state lost around 412,000 people between July 2020 and July 2023. Granted, people moved around during the pandemic, and the rate of net population loss has slowed down a lot since then. But U-Haul still says 49% of their trucks are rented for people moving into the state, compared to 51% leaving the state. While that may seem like a tiny difference for the sheer amount of jobs and opportunities California has, there should be way more in the opposite direction. Turns out, California's economy may have been too successful for its own good. According to Wallet Hub, California has become the least affordable state in the country. And while it does have a booming economy, the 4th largest in the world, if California were a country, that wealth doesn't trickle down to everyone, or even most people. The state has also had a string of bad luck. Major California industries like entertainment are floundering as productions move to other states and countries. Then there were the devastating LA wildfires of December 2024 that had a huge impact on the city. Not to mention the wildfires that devastate parts of California every year, thanks to its famously sunny, dry climate. California may be featured in lots of headlines due to people moving out and its financial issues, but it's hardly the worst state to live in. In fact, it doesn't even touch the top 10, including a couple of states that people are leaving California for. 15. The Lone Star State. Proud, independent, and always fighting for its rights. But Texas' habit of standing apart from the rest of the US may be hurting it more than helping. Some things in Texas, the energy grid for example, might work better if they weren't independent. A 21 cold front and snowstorm made headlines when it led to a blackout for large parts of the state for days, resulting in the deaths of at least 210 people. Long-term residents, used to the power going out with a strong wind, weren't surprised at all. According to one congressional report, Texas had the most power outages of any state between 2019 and 23, 263 in total. Ironic for one of the country's top oil and energy producers. Oxfam America also ranked Texas 45th on a list of best states to work because of low wages, limited unionization, as well as few worker protections. Then there's crime. In 24, Texas became one of only 2 states with not 1, but 2 cities on the nation's most dangerous list. San Antonio placed 10th, with a crime rate 146.2% higher than the national average. Houston placed 9th, with a crime rate 156.8% higher than the national average. Don't worry, we'll get to the other state on that list later. In the meantime, let's look at the home of Sin City, 14. Just a few years ago, people were moving out of big cities like LA and San Francisco to Nevada. The reason was affordable housing. Relative to LA and San Francisco, that is, a super low bar of affordability to clear. Now it looks like everyone snatched up all the affordable homes. Nevada has one of the lowest home ownership rates in the country, coupled with some of the highest housing costs. In 23, 61% of Nevadan households owned their home, 4% lower than the US average. The median home price in February 2025 was $46,000 higher than Arizona, Connecticut, Virginia, or even Rhode Island. And unlike Nevada, most of those states offer better salaries. The other problem with Nevada: most of the population has limited upward mobility, at least regarding jobs that require higher education. Only 87.4% of Nevadans have finished high school, ranking it 5th worst nationwide in terms of high school graduation rates. But Nevada's biggest problem going forward may be water. It's the driest state, with only 10 inches, 25 centimeters of rainfall a year. And cities like Las Vegas keep growing in the middle of the desert, while reservoirs drop to record lows, setting the stage for a full-blown crisis in the future. Unlike other states, they have problems because of their past. 30. During the manufacturing boom of the mid-20th century, Ohio experienced some amazing years of growth and prosperity. But like a former high school football star, the state's best days are far, far behind it. As the Steel Belt transformed into the Rust Belt, Ohio's cities fell into disrepair. Buildings in Cleveland, Toledo, and Cincinnati sit empty and abandoned. One 2023 local news report found that 1 out of every 4 buildings in Cleveland is a vacant lot or building. The problem of empty buildings will only get worse, as Ohio predicts that by 2050, it will experience a net loss of 675,000 people, 5.7% of its population. And with its economy ranked 5th out of all the US states, it doesn't look like things are going to turn around anytime soon. Then again, the state is attracting some young people to its universities and is ranked as 17th in opportunity, so maybe the future is looking brighter. Our next state is facing similar problems. 12. Michigan was once home to the booming Motor City, where cars and music defined Detroit. Today, that same city ranks 2nd in violent crime, nearly 400 above the national average, and 3rd in overall crime, at almost double the national rate. A lack of jobs, high poverty, and the resulting crime rate has caused Michigan to experience net outmigration since the 1970s. That means that domestically, more people are leaving Michigan most years than moving in. A 2024 study by the University of Michigan found that 13th of Michiganders live below the federal poverty line. While 26% of locals may live above it, they are still teetering on the brink of an economic cliff. In total, that means 38 of Michiganders are financially vulnerable, almost 2 out of every 5 people in the state. To make things worse, winters are brutal. In January, you can expect an average high temperature of 31 F, low 0.5 C, and low of 19 F, 7 C. The constant temperature changes, with the hot, humid summers and freezing winters, haven't helped one of the state's other biggest issues: its infrastructure. The Citizens Research Council of Michigan ranked the state 40th in road and bridge conditions in 24. No wonder people can't wait to leave, and probably bust up their car on the way out. Moving away from the Rust Belt, let's go to 11. What comes to mind when you think of South Carolina? Mint juleps? Classy old homes in Charleston? How about the country's 5th highest homicide rate? Or one of the worst poverty gaps in the country? Life in South Carolina can be pretty harsh. US and World News ranked it among the top 10 worst states to live in, partly because of rampant crime and a pretty bad system of education. If you're rich in South Carolina, you may not have noticed any issues at local schools. That's because you can afford not to. But the state's system performs terribly overall. Just over half of South Carolina's 3rd through 8th grade students perform at their grade level in math or reading, which means almost half are performing below grade level. One surprising problem in South Carolina: 1 in 5 students is chronically absent, missing more than 10% of class. When kids aren't in school, they usually end up in trouble. Unfortunately, this is true in South Carolina, where lots of students go to prison before they're even old enough to graduate. South Carolina's juvenile incarceration rate is a full 10% higher than that of the US. And since the state's economy is ranked 39th nationwide, it's not like there's lots of job opportunities keeping people out of prison. South Carolina also ranks near the bottom for earnings. 11th worst for single-person households, 9th for two-person, and 8th for three-person. Our next state, however, ranks 6th worst in median income per person, 10. Kentucky isn't plagued with some common issues of other states, like crime and bad infrastructure, but it ranks really low on something important for a community: health. Turns out the bluegrass state has some of the unhealthiest people around. Considering it's competing with the Deep South, where everything has to be fried at least twice before serving, that's quite an accomplishment. The state is almost dead last in the country for exercise, with 32.5% of the population completely physically inactive. They also have the 4th highest rate of smoking and the 5th lowest levels of childhood vaccination. Unsurprisingly, Kentucky also has some of the highest levels of preventable hospitalizations. So, what is the state doing to fix things? Well, in 2021, Kentucky had a $1.8 billion shortfall, and it regularly makes the list of states needing the most in federal handouts. So it doesn't seem like Kentucky can do much to fix its problems right now. The average resident makes an income of $25 per hour as well, so people's savings can only go so far when it comes to healthcare. At least they have some beautiful hills and landscapes, which, as our next state shows, doesn't make up for all the local problems. 9. You might think the worst things about living in Alaska are the cold and endless nighttime hours in the wintertime. And you'd be wrong. Not that the cold or darkness are all that great either. For all its unspoiled beauty and vast wilderness, Alaska also has a lot of crime. In fact, it has the highest violent crime rate in the entire country. You'll soon see which surprising state has the 2nd highest, but also the highest property crime rate. Coupled with a small labor market, due to its small population and outrageous housing costs, Alaska is getting more difficult to live in every year. And no wonder, as one study found that Alaska had the lowest average income growth of all 50 states. Even though workers in Alaska have the highest average weekly work hours, turns out hard work doesn't pay off at all. Perhaps that's why US World and News ranked its economy 45th of all US states. After the coronavirus pandemic, Alaska's main industries, oil and tourism, were severely hurt and haven't fully rebounded. But things there aren't nearly as bad as in only 3.8% of Oklahomans eat their daily recommended intake of fruits and vegetables, compared to a national average of 7.4% of people in the US. Okay, so no one is doing great when it comes to healthy eating, but only 23% of Oklahomans meet federal physical activity guidelines. That translates to Oklahoma having the highest rate of heart disease in the nation, with over 250 deaths per 100,000 people due to heart problems. But if you need to call a doctor there, you may be out of luck. 14.6% of Oklahomans avoid health care because it's too expensive for them. And maybe that's because almost a third of Oklahomans age 19 to don't have any health insurance at all. Make no mistake, residents still get their hands on plenty of drugs, just not the ones their doctors would recommend. Oklahoma has some of the highest rates of tobacco use in the country. 15.8% of the population smokes. It doesn't have nearly as terrible health care as our next state, though. There's a well-known saying in Alabama, "At least we're not Mississippi," which isn't just a spoiler for a higher-ranked state. You knew that was coming, but also means residents' biggest brag is simply not being among the very worst. Alabama's educational system used to rank below Mississippi's, coming in last in 2019, but Education Weekly still gives the public school system a D+ today because of subpar student performance and adult outcomes. The low rates of higher education are too bad, especially because the state could really use a whole lot more doctors. Locals have the lowest access to healthcare providers in the entire country, which is maybe why Alabama ranks 14th for overall health. As a result of poor healthcare and poor lifestyles, rates of obesity and diabetes are sky high. 39% of the population is obese, placing it fifth among states that send in data. This won't surprise anyone who's eaten a plate full of cholesterol in Mobile, but it contributes to some other pretty bad stats. Like the third lowest life expectancy in the country, with the average Alabama resident dying at 72 years old, and the average man not even making it to his 69th birthday. Compared to an average US life expectancy of 78.3 years overall, that's almost a decade off their life. At least Alabama can be comforted in knowing that, yes, all those stats are in fact worse in Mississippi. So much worse that it's not even the next state on our list. First, let's talk about 6. Tennessee scores low on crime, labor protections, and inclusiveness, and it hasn't just been sliding down the rankings. It's been free-falling. Crime has always been an issue in Tennessee, dragging the state's quality of life metrics down for years. And it's the primary reason why, according to Newsweek, the state dropped 7 places in overall quality of life state rankings in just 1 year. According to USA Facts, Tennessee's crime rate in 2024 was nearly 6 higher than the national average. Just a year earlier, the state logged over 43,000 violent crimes, including more than 700 murders, which means a true crime podcast could go on for over a decade based on 1 year in Tennessee alone. That's why, in addition to Texas, Tennessee is the other U.S. state with 2 different cities ranked among the country's most dangerous. Nashville, with a crime rate 165% higher than the national average. And not to be outdone, Memphis ranks first in the country with a crime rate 3 and higher. Maybe that's why 27.3% of the state has dealt with a depression in their lives, compared to just 21% of the U.S. in general. That's a tad bit higher than our next state as well, but they have other issues too. 5. In Arkansas, 25% of residents are depressed, nearly 40% are obese, and the state has the 4th highest death rate from heart disease. Put together, Arkansas's health is in serious crisis. And the healthcare system doesn't help. It ranks 49th in the nation. Nearly 13% of residents can't afford coverage at all, and even those with access often skip critical care. People in Arkansas have trouble getting hold of a lot of necessities. Between 21 and 23, Arkansas ranked as the most food-insecure state, with nearly 19% of residents unable to afford enough food for their families. It sounds strange given the state's high obesity levels, but that's because when people can barely afford to eat, the cheapest option is usually the unhealthiest junk food. Arkansas is also a true testament to the idea that prison has zero positive effect on crime rates. The state has the 4th highest incarceration rate in the country. 9 in 12 out of every 100,000 residents are in prison. It also has the 4th highest violent crime rate in the country. Arkansas does take first place in one unusual category. It has the lowest rate of dentist visits in the nation. Add in a smoking rate of nearly 23% and let's just say Arkansans won't be showing off many smiles and selfies. You know who beats Arkansas in most health metrics, though? 4. The once great coal mining state of West Virginia has had it rough lately. It has the 2nd lowest median household income, $51,600 per family, and the 4th highest poverty rate at 16.7%, and its main industry, coal, isn't coming back anytime soon because it doesn't make sense financially or environmentally. West Virginia is defined by a trio of unemployment, poverty, and despair. With the nation's highest lifetime depression rate, 26, it became ground zero for the opioid crisis. Though opioids have caused unnecessary deaths everywhere, their spread in West Virginia has been truly tragic. The state now has the highest rate of heroin use in the country, with 1.1% of the population using. West Virginia also leads the nation in smoking, with 28 of residents lighting up. And when it comes to exercise, barely 1 in 5 meet even the minimum federal guidelines. Lastly, US infrastructure doesn't generally score high on almost any count. But the situation in West Virginia is really bad. The double hit of poverty and a state that's almost completely covered in mountains make building and maintaining good infrastructure extremely hard. According to the infrastructure report card, a third of West Virginia roads are in poor condition. The overall infrastructure gets a D grade, not something you'd be proud to show off on your report card. A grade that low puts many of the state's systems at risk. And that's bad news for a place that relies on countless bridges and tunnels just to stay standing. 3. Ranking New Mexico third might be generous. In 2020, WalletHub ranked the state as the worst to live in overall. The survey took 51 factors into account, and New Mexico did well in almost none of them. It ranks 49th in safety, 48th in education, and only 25th in affordability. You would imagine the trade-off for living in a state that chills at the bottom of almost every ranking is that at least it would be cheap. But it's only semi-affordable, apparently. Even that 48th in education might be a lie, because another source, EdWeek Research Center, actually said that public schools in New Mexico are the worst in the country. While 85.8% of U.S. students graduate high school, only 7% of New Mexico students do. Crime is a really big problem in the state. It has the highest property crime rate of any state, with over 1,200 offenses per 100,000 people. It has the second highest violent crime rate, with 717 offenses per 100,000 people, just 1 less than the top offender, Alaska. Unfortunately, New Mexico is also near the top of the list for childhood poverty, with 20% of kids at or below the poverty line. Speaking of places with high poverty rates, 2. Brutal heat, high poverty, and bad health, unfortunately define a fair amount of Mississippi. The US and World News Report has ranked this southern state second worst in the country for multiple years in a row. It did climb to only the third worst state in 25. So hey, progress. Mississippi has the second most obese residents, 40.1% of the state. It also has the highest rates of infant mortality, preterm birth, and low birth weights. That might make sense when you learn that over 50% of working Mississippians have no health insurance at all. In addition, the state also holds the worst ranking in the Economic Hardship Index. The average per capita income in Mississippi is just over $3,800 a year, by far the lowest in the country. A staggering 18% of residents live at or below the poverty line. The country's highest rates of unemployment and food insecurity make matters even worse, as residents have a hard time fighting their way out of poor conditions. Maybe that's why Mississippi has the lowest life expectancy in the country, with an average lifespan of just 79 years old. That places it on par with Nepal and Cambodia. Sounds pretty bad, right? Wait, which state could possibly be worse? 1. In 2024, Louisiana was ranked the worst state to live in by WalletHub. Though it was dethroned by New Mexico in 2025, we still think it deserves number 1 on the list. And here's why. Louisiana has the highest percentage of people living in poverty, 18.22, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. It also has an astounding crime rate. The cities of New Orleans, Shreveport, and Baton Rouge are among the most dangerous cities in the U.S. Though Louisiana doesn't have the highest violent crime rate, it does have the highest homicide rate, which is the crime you'd least like to happen to you. Probably. There were 15.8 murders per 100,000 people in 2020 alone. To give you an idea of how crazy that is, the second highest state, Missouri, has only 10.4 homicides per 100,000. On a related note, Louisiana also has the highest incarceration rate. In 2020, 680 out of every 100,000 people were behind bars. Add some horrible environmental issues to the mix, and life there seems even worse. Louisiana is home to what's known as Cancer Alley. Over 200 fossil fuel and petrochemical production plants exist along an 85-mile, 137-kilometer stretch of the Mississippi River between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. For decades, they've been allowed to pump toxins into the air and water, driving up cancer rates in towns all along the river. Just one of these areas was shown to have the highest risk of cancer from industrial air pollution in the country, 7 times the national average. And Johns Hopkins researchers believe these rates have actually been underestimated. Louisiana isn't exactly a picture of health. Nearly 40% of residents are obese, and life expectancy is the 4th worst in the nation at just 72 years. The city is also prone to hurricane damage, which didn't end with Katrina. Louisiana is dangerously exposed to rising seas, with much of New Orleans sitting at or even below sea level. FEMA's National Risk Index ranks it worst in the nation for natural disaster losses at an average of $246 per person. So if you live in Louisiana, you have higher chances of dying by pollution, natural disasters, fellow residents, and obesity. Just to name a few. Some states in America might be rough to live in, but things can get far worse abroad. Watch worst places in the world to travel to see the destinations you'll want to avoid, or click on this video instead.